So first of all, I just want to say right up front, this is a literary book with a capital L.
I'm sorry, I left my glasses at home.
This is not a book that would ever have, organically come to our shores. And in fact, we aren't the publisher. Bookshop.org is the publisher, and this is the first book that they're publishing. Mm-hmm. But they came to us not because of our brilliant literary and poetic acumen.
Well, I don't know. Let's not rule that out. I mean, we have the most of both of those things. I mean, more than anybody, especially anybody listening. Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Ellie Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about how we ended up in the wild position of becoming the publisher that handles distribution for Lydia Davis's new book, Our Strangers. We,
Yeah.
You weren't even going to take a stab at that one. We had Sarah High, who works in marketing at Bookshop, on the pod some years ago.
We can link to that episode in the notes.
And we became buddies enough that when I ran into her at in the staircase at a few different times, actually. I think the first time was at AWP. And she said, they might be interested in working with you. And then, I followed up a few times about it. Didn't hear back anything conclusive or definitive. And then I ran into her again in the hallway at Winter Institute. And she said, we still haven't figured out what we're going to do with that Lydia Davis book. You might get in touch with Andy Hunter, who is the CEO of Bookshop. And we were like, sure, why not? We'll try it. Worth a shot. And we did. And we were sitting down with Andy at a day or two later. And we explained to him how we built our supply chain system, which is that we own and operate our own warehouses, and we have field sales teams, and we service all the major wholesalers, but we don't notably sell into exactly one account. And that is the one account that Lydia Davis was rather intent on her book not being for sale in.
P.S. It's Amazon.
Oh, right, yeah, that's the one. I couldn't remember. And she, was adamant about this and was told over and over that this was impossible and that no publisher would be able to accommodate this. And, we do really well whenever the sentence begins, nobody would ever. We normally are the punchline on that sentence.
It's so true. Except these weirdos, they'll try anything.
And then, so, we met with Andy and we were like, Andy, we own all this infrastructure. And Andy was like, wow, that's really impressive. And then I was like, and we built it out not for this exact reason, but because this just makes the most business sense. It's running it ourselves is cheaper, faster, more nimble, more efficient, etc. And he was clearly contemplative. And then it was fairly apparent that this was going to happen because there literally was nobody else, so it wasn't.
Yeah, we are probably the only trade distributor in the U.S. that could sell your book and not sell it to Amazon.
And, obviously there's difficult things where you have to go to anybody that sells to quote-unquote internet retailers and ask them if they would sell it to Amazon.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you get sort of a dodgy not answer. And then you have to be like, okay, got it. So you would. Note taken, And then Andy wanted to limit how many copies a store could order. And then we kind of settled on the idea that if a store bought more than a certain quantity, they would approve them one by one. And I'm just going to say, knock on wood, we're several months into publication, and it has not appeared for sale on Amazon, though curious,
at least not the U.S. Amazon.
Yeah, the British edition has become for sale on the U.S. Amazon, confusingly.
But we did plant an Easter egg there. We suggested to Andy that he make like the top line of the description, that's bold, say not available on Amazon, or available only in independent booksellers. So at least the UK Amazon listing does show that, which I guess is the least we can do.
And then the best part of the story that I didn't know is that Lydia Davis had read How to Resist Amazon, a book that we had published some years ago. And, it seems like this is part of what perked her idea and interest. And then she did an event with the author of How to Resist Amazon, Danny Kane. And, and I was like, wow, this is thoroughly gone full circle. And then by utter coincidence, Danny had a brand new book that had simultaneous publication called How to Protect Bookstores. And I was like, wow, this is we could not live in a more perfect world, said nobody ever. But in that moment, it really, truly felt right.
And one thing I really appreciate about this book is that Lydia Davis is such an established and respected author that she can take this risk.
Right, with a literary heavyweight such as us.
Yeah, and she's able to kind of pave the way in a way, and similar to, I think, how we have among publishers, and be like, look, you don't need Amazon to survive or even thrive or even sell a lot of copies of your book, It's gone into the second printing. The book is doing quite well. It doesn't need Amazon.
Right.
And maybe other people will follow her lead.
And the interesting thing is that her numbers have always been good. And given that, this book is 20-some years into her career, first printing was 10,000, blew through them, moving into the second printing. And, we're probably going to sell comparable numbers to her recent books. That's almost the most fascinating part to me. I wouldn't, we were a little bit like, maybe, we've said this about more than a few things. Maybe if we try really hard, we can, do an okay job compared to her recent works. But yeah, it's gone remarkably well. And that was sort of the initial question was do you think you could sell maybe a few thousand? And we're like, I think we could do better than that. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week. I feel like independent booksellers have just really gotten behind it. They had a great PR person, and the media has really gotten into it. That not selling on Amazon angle is a great sales angle. But honestly, in the end, it's the book. Yeah. And it was an amazing moment. Because of who she is, this brings a lot of ink to talking about this issue. Where poets and writers did a feature about it. There's lots of other people write about the book, obviously, and review the book, but a lot of people are more writing. It's an interesting thing because it creates the opportunity to write about the supply chain aspect of things. And we love to talk about the supply chain here at the literary publisher of Microcosm.